Oh, you're not? I thought,
I think it's you and Donnie and Mark.
Mark and Don.
okay, so I'm the only
Don is on his way.
member of the building and grounds, but then we also have Jason Munson in attendance, Julie Wagner in attendance, and Mike Bounds in attendance as regular board members. All right, did we have a public comment?
Yeah, Jim did sign in. to,
Okay.
Public comment.
If you'd like to, I think we give 5 minutes, right?
5 minutes?
Yeah, 5
I
minutes.
got my timer ready to go.
All right.
You guys can talk.
All right.
You start early. I'm really here to hear some of the things that are being thrown around. So many things have transpired over the past few years. So I don't know exactly where everything's at. I'm hearing things I'm not happy about. So I'm concerned about a lot. I used to be a board member for the Joy Council. I've come here in concern of that before. This merger, from the viewpoint of many of the residents on our side of the county, before the ink was completely dry in this agreement, the Alito parents have been trying to shut down those two schools. It's a slap in the face. You have two solid buildings. Yes, they're old, but they're very solidly built. They don't make schools like that anymore. We felt like the beast was starved to make sure that they would fall apart and they tear them down. That's the perception that we have. I came here out of concern because Joy just put in a $4 million water plant in anticipation of being able to meet these needs. They have the school completely shut down or virtually shut down. It's going to put a lot of strain on the residents of that town. I don't know the situation in New Boston, but I do know Joy has always been aware of the value of that school in that community and that side of the county. And if it's going to be shut down, there should be something to replace it. I'm really not happy to hear that there's going to be a $300,000 administrative center when I work in a school district that has 2 rooms in a high school. That is their administrative center. I think that is financial insanity. And we're going to be spending that kind of money. I would prefer to see the schools somewhere in the middle of the county where both sides are going to have to go to rather than just one side. The people who are living on the western side of the county are going to have to drive a lot longer or everything's going to be in Alito. But if there's some way we could find land and start building buildings in an area where all people can get to and not be part of the town, so that there is an identity issue taking place, I think that'd be a lot more comfortable for people to buy into. I realize there are issues. I know there's financial situations. So I don't understand the $300,000. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Joy is dying. We've lost industry to Alito. We're trying to get people to come in. It's a battle, but if that school gets shut down, there's virtually zero chance we'll ever get into it. So this is where I'm coming from. As a former employee, I'm concerned about the aspects of using inadequate schools to crowd all these kids into. I think the high school is way too small, has been from the very moment that this merger took place. I was really hoping to see some drive to get a new building built in that respect. But this, I'm sorry, this makes no sense. So I'm hoping I get some clarity by listening to your conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? We don't usually do board comments, do we? Or
We have. And I just want to know that I'm going to turn this over to John and Mark. really provided two different agendas, but the piece that we normally provide, those are just all talking points that I think they're going to address. There are the last couple, I think, that the board may need to speak to. But certainly the first three are part of what both Mark and John kind of talked about.
So John, we handed it over to you then.
If you want. We're ready when you are.
We are ready.
You tell us what do you want to do? Okay, so wanted to start by just kind of going back to where we were last meeting. Last meeting, we talked about just a series of potential options that were on the table. Discussed a couple additional options, and so there's been a lot of different possible pieces and parts talked about for a really long time. So what I put together was like a sheet. It's two-sided that kind of lists through kind of everything that we've talked about to date. And then the sheet right behind that is a kind of a spreadsheet. The most sensible thing is just kind of just kind of go through all the options. This is what we've talked about to date. About the only thing that's not on that list, I'll mention when we get there. Want to just kind of talk through it, and then what really makes sense is to start talking about it with respect to priorities, goals, and numbers. So in essence, with a spreadsheet, we could sort of live start building what solutions to this district looks like and what the financial implications are. If we can start to get a sense of what that is and means, then the next piece that would be relative to that is how do you start to skin that in terms of sequence and priority of what gets hit first. So I started with options listing at the elementary level. So one of the options that had been discussed was a consolidated elementary. So there would be a centralized elementary in Joy, 5 seconds to serve as a single elementary for the district. It would make use of portions of the existing Joy building, but it would require about a 55,000 square foot addition to that. Best projection of cost is around 17 million. There was discussion of, could you remove the 3-story wing at New Boston and replace with a newer classroom addition? So that would need to be a 2-section building. There was kind of 2 ways to look at this. One would be seeing if there was a way to keep the existing gymnasium. The other would be to add a new gymnasium and remove that piece. It's going to take a little bit of extra work to figure that out, but 2-section classroom addition with bathrooms, art room, music room, some of the sport things you need is about just shy of 22,000 square feet. Probably is going to be about $7 million investment. If you add in a gym, it raises that by a little better than $1 million. And that,
are you trying to build like on the north side?
it'd probably have to go west, kind of west or northwest.
I didn't know you were trying to build on the 3-story part.
No, I think the only way you do that successfully would be to keep that 3-story open and add on, then remove that after the fact.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
You still need the space until you get.
No,
the
you got
addition.
tons of room out north and west.
Yeah.
yeah. What I don't know is I think you can get it to stretch along the property line. You might have to turn a corner. If you do a gym, you might have to figure out a weird solution to get the gym in there. So,
You equipment might have to move.
we talked about adding a gymnasium and possibly 2 classrooms at Apollo next door. That would be a bigger gymnasium, maybe something that's bigger that could be used for sports practices. Maybe add a couple of classrooms for the early learning program. Had it figured at about 9,600 square feet, somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million. There was talk about, and I did not add this into this list, but there was also talk about adding a gymnasium to this building. At our meeting last week or last month, I got the impression that we kind of made the decision to talk about it at Apollo as opposed to this building. If we want to put that into consideration, I can pull up that number.
Would it be attached to anything or would it be like a separate building?
Over there, it would be, again, it'd be attached to the west side is where you have the most space to do that. The two classrooms would be a little bit bigger because they're for little kiddos for preschool. The gymnasium, to park that on the end makes sense. It would have connection from the two main corridors heading that way.
If we're thinking ahead, would we want it to be attached, detached? So it's not, I mean,
So there's two problems that come up when you detach. Detached would, well, there's a couple answers here. Detached makes sense for one respect. You could position it different, that it could serve both these buildings. Attached is good for the elementary school because it mitigates security risks of kids walking out of the building and back in. And then also what we found with buildings that have remote buildings is there's the loss of instruction time, because if it's snowing or raining, they got to put coats and boots on, go outside, go back in, take them off. So that gets to be a bit of a problem. So attached is good. If you were trying to make use of it for this building and that building, that's a whole different
I was just
situation.
thinking in 10, 20, 30, whatever.
Yeah,
When you tear down the other one, is it a big deal if it's attached?
Probably not.
probably not.
I think, for the not knowing what the future always holds, right?
Right.
I think having it that attached, and maybe we hedge our bets a little bit and put just a little connector hall. I think we want to have it attached from an operation standpoint for every day, whether whatever school activities are going on. You don't want people having to go inside and outside all the time. So
And when you say gymnasium with additional space for seating, are you talking about a similar gym that's on here, or what are you?
So I had it figured as it's about just shy of an 8,000 square foot. So it'd be something that you have one main cross court, two half size cross
What size
courts.
is that? No idea.
That's a junior
this
high.
is a junior high
size.
court. It's only 74 feet long versus 84. for
So
high school.
on that, I was figuring the 74, but I was putting a bigger buffer all the way around. Just
So
extra space.
instead of, so you say this is 8,000 square feet? or-
So this is probably 6,000 square feet. I was just adding a couple.
That's cool.
So you'd be similar to that, but you'd have seating on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably get 300 people in, maybe, something like that, for that size. Classroom addition at Joy, you could add this probably could be looked at two different ways instead of just the one that I put here. I was asked to look at a classroom addition at Joy, 3-section classroom addition. That would essentially allow you to move out of this or the Apollo building and hold class at the Joy building. To do just the classrooms, make use of the existing gym and band and cafeteria spaces would necessitate about 38,000 square foot of addition. That'd be about $12 million.
So that last thing, so the first one with the new K-5 elementary at Joy. That 17 million was tearing everything down.
No, that also makes use of the existing gym,
Okay, so-
cafeteria, that.
So what's that 3-section for? Is that turning that into a junior high? Is that what it was?
That, I was asked if we could look at that possibly to replace Apollo. If you took it down to a 2-section building, you could use it to replace New Boston. So let's say you wanted to do a 2-section building there, it'd essentially be probably just a shade less than what we priced out for the New Boston edition. So
What is, and I'm sorry if I'm having a brain dead tonight, but what's a sectioning? when
Oh.
you say two section or three section?
So you have 3 classrooms for each grade level currently at Apollo. You have 2 at New Boston. The grade level classrooms at Apollo have 22.
Okay.
students.
Okay.
So you were consolidating from
Yeah.
5 down to 3.
So
then-
a section is pre-K, K,
Okay.
first, second, third, fourth, fifth,
So
sixth,
that'd still
seventh,
be
eighth, ninth,
K,
on
that'd still
12.
be K5.
If it's K to
Okay.
5, having a one section school is 1 classroom K through 5.
Okay.
If it's a K through 8 building, a 1 section school is 1 classroom of K through 8.
So how many
So-
sections were in that first number, the 17?
5. So the very first
Okay.
one was, that was right sizing your district from 5 buildings to 3.
That's the square footage decrease that we
Yeah.
came up with,
And does
because we
pre-K
wouldn't have
fall
to
into
have.
K?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so pre-K, pre-K, I think I have that still built in here, yeah. So in theory, you could, if you wanted to make a step towards an elementary building at Joy, you could say, well, maybe we're gonna, instead of doing a project at New Boston, we could do it at Joy and just do it in a new location. It centralizes, you're still gonna have 2 elementaries. Or you could say, instead of doing a project at Apollo, where we have to add a new gym, you could do a project at Joy. You'd still have 2 elementaries. It's just now you're New Boston and Joy, or you're Joy and Aledo. Those are kind of 2 considerations that you could put in. With the exception of the very first item on this list, you're talking about a 4-building district. The very first item on this list with the 17 million cost, that takes you down to a 3-building district.
I guess, Scott, how much money do we have? I guess we should probably, because we got all these numbers out here. How much money do we have allocated towards these projects at this point?
I mean, I think $20 million is a good working number based on the bond sales that we had, your existing balances,
Okay.
whether it's in O&M, the health, life, safety, the capital projects fund, the additional federal dollars that you have from the American Rescue Plan. I mean, that's probably a good working, it might not be quite that high, but you can't spend 20 million all at once. And you're going to continue to collect $450,000 a year in sales tax revenue. You're going to continue to collect $100,000 a year in health, life, safety revenue. You know, so you're going to be making over $500,000 a year put towards those kinds of projects.
Touching on the section building, number of sections in the building again, just for a second. We have to be careful that if we say we're going to do a 3-section building versus a 5-section building, or a 2-section versus a 3-section, there's other things that get attached to the number of sections. How big is the cafeteria? How, restrooms, and so you can't just say, well, we're going to build a 2-section building now and we'll add 2 or 3 more sections on down the road, without planning ahead that, hey, we need to make those core pieces of that 2-section building big enough for a 5-section building down the road. So and it's a little early to get into those nitty-gritty little things, but just keep it in the back of your mind that if you're trying to do something in stages, there's no problem with that. We just have to be aware of that so that we can keep those pieces all lined up. And maybe, down the road, we change it into a 5-section building. Well, maybe we're going to do a new cafeteria because that existing cafeteria will become a new commons, or I don't know what, but
Right.
it's just not a straight line additive or deductive process. If that makes sense.
And a 4-building district gives you some opportunities for future change. If you had a building at Joy, it could be a first step towards down the road. If you wanted to do a single elementary, it set you up that you could make that move. Having 2 elementaries also still leaves on the table the idea that you could make a change to attendance centers in the future. So if you wanted to do a shift to a K3 or a K235 model, you could always do that down the road as well. So there's a lot that you probably won't decide, you know, in the near future, but it's leaving that valve in place that gives you opportunity for down the road for consideration. The two line items, updates and improvement to Apollo, update and improvement to New Boston, those are items that had been discussed as taking care of accessibility issues, some of the maintenance and repair items there. One thing to keep in mind with New Boston, if you remove the 3-story piece and build a new addition, you're going to kind of take away that piece because most of those issues exist in that 3-story wing.
And that's money we already have allocated.
No.
Not necessarily.
No, most of that you do not.
Okay.
Those are additional health, life, safety items that were identified.
After our last.
After.
Well,
correct.
and they may have been identified in the first one,
They
but we
weren't.
chose not to pick, they weren't required.
Right.
You would have
So we
to
deferred.
file amendment to
Yeah.
include those.
And a lot of those things might be, and I don't remember what they were in what, interior doors,
Yeah.
windows,
Doors, door
um,
openings,
lighting,
windows.
ceilings,
Yeah, there was some
flooring.
flooring, ceiling, some wall conditions. It's just a smattering of stuff.
Does the 20 million number that you just gave us, does that include health, life, safety dollars that we currently have?
Yes, that
Okay. So
includes
that's all
approximately 1.2 million in current in health, life, safety dollars we already have.
okay.
For the high school, we talked about a variety of things. Not on this list is a new high school, mostly because that's a cost barrier that exceeds the available funds. So if you were to build a new high school, it's in excess of 30 million bucks. Probably going to take a longer bit of thought if that's a goal. But if it was improvements and updates to the high school, there was discussion about secure entrance, commons, office expansion and remodeling. That is the entry side of the building that's reworking the drive loop, pushing out the main entry to create an accessible entrance. That would also expand that main entry lobby. You could create more of a common space there. Secure entrance, building some additional space for office, which would then free up space for a nurse office, which that building doesn't have. We were estimating about 3 million. This also would give us the opportunity to create accessibility to the gym, which sits at that different floor elevation. So that would be an improvement there. Cafeteria renovation expansion. One of the things we looked at one time was either doing a remodel and expansion of the current cafeteria commons or possibly even moving that to a different portion of the building. Got just shy of 2 million there. Physical education, remodeling and expansion. A couple of things that were identified were the need for some additional multi-purpose space. That's not a gymnasium, but more of a true multi-purposing space. We had it sized at about 6,000 square feet, doing renovation and improvement to the weight room and locker rooms, restrooms that are down on the lower level. That was just shy of, or just around 4.5 million. Special education, there was a need for 2 additional special education classrooms. I had this priced at 800,000. I'm confident you could probably do it a little bit more economically than that. I have them sized kind of big right now. But the costs are kind of all over the place, so I have it estimated a little bit high at the moment. But that would be 2 classrooms added onto the building. We also talked about, could you make a hard link between the main building and the VOTEC? So that would create a enclosed corridor. That again alleviates security concerns of kids walking out in the open between buildings, kids having to walk through the snow or the rain. You could do just a straight corridor connection. We did do that as a corridor that had 4 classrooms connected to it. 2 of those would be used for special education. We know for sure you can make use of at least 1 for the VOTEC program. That left 1 additional room that could either go for flexible use or VOTEC. That's about $2.5 million. Renovating the VOTEC building. At one time, we did discuss that that building could use improvement and updates. It'd probably take about $2 million to just do general improvements to that facility. And then there was 2 items, high school remodeling. One says common spaces. So this is corridors, restrooms, some of the shared use spaces in the building. It ends up being about 25% of the building at a cost of about $4 million. If you wanted to prioritize instructional spaces, so more of classrooms and you know, the spaces the kids are in and learning in, that's more like 70% of your building. That's about $7.5 million. So this is a long list. It's not everything we've ever considered. This is just the things that have been more recently populating in the list. So with that, I am going to shut up and let you guys ask questions, talk, discuss.
I got a question after that.
Yeah,
Do we ever have any plan on new high school in any way, shape, or form, other than just kind of guesstimate?
we had a program for it and a line item cost on it. And the discussion was that you, when we talked about this, that you would probably make use of land on this campus over here. The high school to
I got
do,
no plans to put any money in high school.
new high school. We had it figured out as a 400 student high school. It's about 130,000 square feet. And from a cost standpoint,
Well, for us to do it, you keep doing your thing. For us to do it, we have to get like money from the community. We can't. You know, we're not gonna have all that money.
Yeah, because it wasn't like 30.
It's 35 or 37 million.
37 million. We can't
I
even borrow
remember
that much.
34, but whatever.
Did you say 130,000?
130,000 square feet. Could you sharpen that?
Right,
Yeah, you could.
But you're not gonna make it half that.
Right,
size,
you might make
Maybe you
it
get down to
120.
120, 110. Yeah.
But at some point, we have to form some kind of, I
You're-
don't know, something to
The
go. hit
good
up
deal
the
right
rich
now
people.
is $300 a square foot. So that's 39 million.
It
Right,
adds
so-
up fast.
So how do we go after the people like Yates who got all the money? And, try to separate that from- We need
You
some
gotta
kind
start
of
changing your attitude, that's.
like, well, we need some kind of like, not a committee, we gotta have those, but like, I don't know.
So Tad, back to your comment. If there's a consideration for a high school, and I'll find this doc that has the cost in there. The question is, how do you prioritize needs in the district? Is it that you bank the 20 million and keep working on additional funds to go after that? Or is it start whittling away at needs at the elementary level, and then what's left residually gets
Well, there's certain
partnered
stuff
for
we
that?
have- We have to upkeep, we gotta do along the
Yeah,
way,
exactly.
but I don't think it's wise to keep dumping money on high school. You know, it's very expensive and it doesn't get any cheaper. It's just like Joy, just saying that position yet, it's coming up on that, so. But it's hard to go up to Donnie again, just using Donnie. It's hard to walk up and hit him up for money when you don't even know what you're asking. That's my point, is at some point we have to have, you know, an ask, you know, whatever, who knows, maybe we get 30 million. We can build stuff everywhere, everybody's happy. But, you know,
39.
Grants, what's the, does that change any?
Has there been any position movement on that?
I mean, it moved across the aisle, so it's sitting in the Senate. The way the bill is worded now, though, that it will first fund whatever dollars would be allocated. And you can't ask for dollars until they're allocated now. Where under the old program, you could ask all you wanted, they just put you in line and there was no money.
But we don't even have a plan if that came out. We don't have something to hand them and say, hey.
Yeah, because nobody's been they quit accepting any
That's what I'm
asks
saying, say tomorrow.
7 or 8 years ago. But they did say the ones that they promised in 04, 05, and 06, as part of that bill, will all get funded before they start doing any new ones.
So they'll use up all the money already.
So I was gonna say.
Any
if you're
money
getting a
that's gonna
million
get
left,
allocated in the first few years is
Right.
probably already gonna be spoken for.
If you-
And a
So
certain number of
30
those districts have already done something else rather than relying on the state. So some of it won't be.
You can't wait around
work on it.
15
Right.
years.
About 38 million with new furniture and new technology throughout. Because basically you probably wouldn't want to build a new building and take all your old furniture. So I had that built in.
Was that the year, 2 year ago price, or is that? 'Cause you haven't updated that.
Yeah, it's probably a little light. That is
What
based on,
about predictions on inflation, the way things are right now? Are these numbers we have even realistic?
so the numbers on this sheet are about as best as we can guess. We've got about 15%-ish of float in the market, just in the market numbers, just in contingency and escalation padding. So is that enough? Not sure. Kind of depends on what the market does here. If you see any kind of market correction, market crash, I doubt these numbers are going to come down. It's just, they're not going to go up. The best that we can look back to is kind of the prior market crash. We were dealing with rising construction pricing to the point of, and Bill, you probably remember this, you could guess where everything was going.
Talking about 08.
Yeah, 08. When the market crashed, everything flattened. And it, instead of going up, it just held tight for probably 2 years. There's no indication that that's what's going to happen here. It's just the best predictor you can look at is what happened previously. So if we had a big market correction, it would not keep escalating. But right now, 12 to 17% is where we're seeing that escalation happening on a annualized basis. And then we've just basically built the pricing on the current numbers. There are inflationary in our budget models. We've got inflation adds. So to start building it for year over year, we can put those inflators on there and tell you what the number is. So if it's a 2025 project, it's going to be 10% higher likely.
are we adding stuff in that we're saying, hey, we don't care what the money is, we want to add all these in, or are there ways to combine some of those rooms, or? I just know the whole time we've been gearing
No.
towards this, or at least myself, I've used numbers we've used the whole time, and I was around 3.5 million, and then we're thinking, well, that gym's kind of almost a lean-to onto the 3-story, so if you take that down, making that gym work may be
I
difficult.
think it's gonna be hard.
So if you added that in, I was thinking 1.5 roughly based on numbers we've been running. So I'm thinking, okay, we got a $1 million bill coming to do this. And now it's 8.8.
That's because the market is still skyrocketing.
And you
It is.
have to go back and look at the program.
Yeah.
More than just the 10 rooms.
Right.
Does it
Yeah,
do
there's
anything
all
to
sorts of
come
stuff
down?
that you have to, janitors closets, bathrooms. Even though you've got, the closet for IT is 4x5 or 6x6 or whatever. It's still, 36 square feet, 40 square feet at, $300, $280 a square foot. So you have to really go back and look at the individual proposals square footage breakdown, because we've got it all in a spreadsheet, so it's all easy to see.
Is there any cafeteria in any of that?
But
So
you have to
there's-
look, you can't ignore all those support.
There's one in there. There's.
Do we add a kitchen to it?
They don't have cafeteria.
Yeah, they do.
It's,
Yeah.
it's a
It's-
multi-purpose room.
It's on
All
the,
multi-purpose
the
rooms.
the end of the
Yeah.
new edition.
So you would still be bringing food into another building.
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
asked. We
Unless you
didn't
had a
bring in a
kitchen.
kitchen on that.
And,
No, the discussion was that kitchen would still be centralized.
and bathrooms are a big issue, both in New Boston and Joy. The majority of the bathrooms are in the 3-story wings with the old plumbing and all the things that that entails.
Yeah.
So even the new side. of
Mike, the
Joy
problem is
a
it's,
problem.
once you get rid of the 3-story wing, you really kind of have to make provision for all that stuff. And so it ends up being a big
ADA compliance
addition.
And all that stuff. Joys are always backed up.
Yeah.
And so, are we saying that the building can't be any smaller than 55,000, or I'm sorry, 28,650 square feet? No,
So
not at all.
we did
We're
size,
not gonna make it, we're not gonna make it 15,000 square feet.
well, we
right?
sized down the classrooms because you're 15 kids class-ish.
18 is where we
18.
have a very small class of 15, but then the rest are about 18-ish.
Yeah, so a little bit smaller than Apollo, so in theory, classrooms could be a little smaller there. Keep the building addition a little bit more compact, so we sized it that way.
We're trying to be having the square footages, then the costs that are related to those try to be reasonable.
Right.
So, because we don't want to tell you that, it's going to be 28,000 square feet and it ends up that we have to actually do 38,000 square feet. And of course, we don't want to tell you that it's going to be 18,000 square feet if it needs to be 28,000 square feet. So we're trying to be in the right vicinity, right ballpark for it, so.
The gym you guys are talking about, is that like somebody, anybody else can use that? Or is that just to replace the old carpet gym? I mean, I really don't know.
Yeah, so that'd be, and you could make that a little smaller. That would be say a 50 by 74 court, which is a minimal amount of space
I mean,
on
I'm
each side.
not worried about it. I just,
Yeah,
I
Well,
don't think
I
it's
had a
one that anybody's gonna utilize.
Concern of if you go to that, even with the new gym, if you don't have Joy, where are we hosting the, all their school-wide things that they have for programs and, I mean, we're there,
What are you guys doing now?
not anymore, but when I had kids there, we were there
gonna
at Joy for
We may give it to us.
big events.
Your Christmas concert, our spring concert, all the two Fridays from
So
now.
if you have seating at the Apollo gym, it probably wouldn't be enough to have host programs there that either, would it? If you put seating in
No,
a
we're
new
talking about
multi,
300, so
so it
just
wouldn't be enough
maybe
there
3 or
either.
4 rows on each side,
Apollo's was always
mostly
there.
where students would sit when you bring them in there for class.
But they can come, I mean, do what they're doing now, but if we don't have Joy, what would we do for New Boston's special events and that sort of thing?
Yes, I wear $300 Christmas. I like, I mean, I don't know, something, but I like the Boston idea. I don't know, tweak it or whatever, but. But I want to be able to build a high school at some point, if I get money. And I can't get money if I don't know what to ask for. Because
We gotta reduce the number of buildings we have before we get money.
You would reduce that whole high school. It'd be gone. While I am.
1 minus 1 plus 1 is still 1.
Yeah. Okay. Build a high school off of that, boom, becomes one big building. Problem solved.
There you go. Get some less administrators.
Those guys can hear you.
Yeah, he's retiring. He's the one I'm talking about.
They'll just mail it in.
His new jobs come up every day. I need a superintendent one of these days. We get all kinds of stuff. People retiring all the time.
McDonald's $15 an hour.
We- I heard from a contractor earlier this week that there's such a shortage of carpenters that the carpenters union is going to let retired people come back active
For more than
working.
66 days a year.
for, I think it was 1,600 hours a year, which is like 3/4 time. And no hit to their pension.
So those guys are probably good.
If you said. If you said. So Ted, you said New Boston seems like an interesting idea. If you said that that was something that you would embark on, that's, let's say it's the $7 million, that leaves you with about 13 out of 20.
That doesn't touch Apollo.
That
Doesn't
even
touch
fit it.
Apollo.
And then if you put up, what was it, 9 or 10 into the high school?
I got a great idea. We build a new building in Joy, and then we don't have to touch New Boston or Apollo, and it costs about the same amount of money.
Make a great archaeologist.
So we close New Boston?
Yeah. And save $1 million a year.
How you feel about that, Jim?
I'm not gonna get into New Boston politics. I'll
We've been
stay
in
out
it
of
for
that.
6 months. So
Huh?
we've been in it for 6 months.
You spend the same amount of money as repairing or replacing or doing whatever you want to do. You already got a nice gym there. We already got some nice amount of property there. Our bus barn's already there. You got everything you need there. And you solve 2 problems and you save $1 million a year by doing that.
I want to fix Joyce.
Well, that's
Yeah,
that's no big deal.
Yeah.
That's the simplest problem that we got in all this.
So
Way
we're
simpler
gonna
than
do this
electrical,
every
way
meeting
simpler.
where we go back to this thing every time.
So
Seriously.
What do you mean?
Oh, Joy.
the
I don't know
thing,
what else. You're talking about spending $8 million one, and then he just said, oh, I ain't doing nothing for Apollo. If you start adding them together, none of those, if you do both of those things, then you don't save the $1 million a year. You just got 2 buildings you spent the same amount of money on, and then you still don't have any savings. That makes no sense to me.
I just stay on the hamster wheel, man. Just.
so the thing that I.
So are you saying that because you personally don't want that, that it's not, that's
It's not
impossible?
me. There's tons of stuff I'm cool with, that other people are not cool with. I'm sick of getting emails. I'm sick of it. I'm done. They don't want to go to Joy. I'm good.
So the thing
But
that's
today is
new,
what?
The
that,
people, you don't get emails from apparently.
Well, I don't care if there's, what does that, how does
You
that?
said you don't get emails from them. You don't. but
I get,
do.
I got, the last time when I said that, I got 16 emails total. 16 people out of whoever, and if all these people are, why aren't they on the board?
I don't know. You're asking the wrong dude. I'm on the.
I'm just asking, why aren't they on the board if
I
they
don't know.
got
We're
all
still
these great
talking about shit we were
ideas?
talking about 6 months ago. So I don't know.
I'm just saying, that's why that idea came to the top as being the best idea, because it makes the most sense.
Yeah, apparently.
That's why we
I mean,
keep-
It doesn't make no sense to me. I'm just wondering.
So it makes more sense to spend the same amount of money, have repairs or upgrades or whatever at 2 different locations and not have any savings after you spent the same amount of money that you would spend.
What 2 locations? You talking about New Boston and Apollo?
Yes. If you build 1 location at Joy, you got 1 location now, you got the $1 million savings and it's all brand new except for the gymnasium and the cafeteria.
Are you building the $17 million option
Yeah.
or the 12?
17.
So if we do the $17 million option, just to
All
throw
I'm
this
saying is
out
if you
there,
do New Boston and do Apollo, you're getting close to that 17 million anyhow.
Or you're-
Oh, you're talking about building a
You're-
gym at both. You're talking about both these things.
oh, maybe.
I don't
But my
care what you do. I mean,
concern, here's my
we
concern.
already just talked, we're probably gonna need that gym in New Boston because there's no. There's, it's a lean-to thing that ain't gonna live through this, right?
Potentially.
Potentially. So, all right, Mike, you had a question.
So, and I thought it got brought up, but I don't see where it is and how I said it, but something I thought I heard new was adding on to Joy for just instead of New Boston.
Yeah. So
That is the new thing that's in, that I have not heard that.
that was
before.
just Scott and I were just talking and we said, you could do that. We didn't have enough time to price it or anything, but
12.8 million.
no, it'd be less. I think you're probably closer to that 7 million that you're talking about investing at
Also,
New
the same
Boston.
thing you build in Boston.
You build and enjoy. So it's kind of like. I
But
could do
you,
it
but you
there, I
have the
could do it
gym,
there.
you have the cafeteria, you have,
Exactly.
So if we do the $17 million option, we only got 20 million to spend. We went into this whole thing saying that we didn't want to raise taxes on the folks within the county. And if we do that $17 million option by consolidating the schools, I don't see how we can't raise money on the people to fix the high school and to fix this building. Does that 17 million include tearing down New Boston and Apollo? It didn't.
It didn't, so that was the disposition of those buildings. I can tell you what those costs are.
So my whole thing is that consolidated grade school sounds like a great idea until we run out of money, and now we can't do anything to improve the high school. We can't do anything to
Yeah,
improve
but
this
you'll have
building
roughly $1
without,
million more that you're spending right
That-
now just to maintain.
you know,
what
we
already
won't,
have.
we won't see that. And here's why. Which building in this district uses the most energy?
This one right now.
This one, because they're new, because you have to exchange air. You have to do a lot of things that you don't have
You're
to
not
do in
gonna
the
burn
old
up $1
building.
million in utilities every year.
And
But it
most
will
of
be
it,
substantial.
it'll be more. And most of that savings, we said it's not immediate because it's in people.
Right.
And if that comes over time through attrition, it comes over time through our declining enrollments at those grades now, which is getting closer and closer to 4 sections all the time instead of 5. It comes through the fact that maybe I don't need 2 guidance counselors now for those buildings, or I don't need 2 Title I teachers, and I don't need 2 math interventionists. We're duplicating lots. I probably don't need 2 nurses. I don't need 4 secretaries. I don't know if I need more than 1 administrator, because that's just depends how many you got. It's the same way with some of those other people, guidance counselor, what's the most number of kids they can accommodate? If there's 600 kids, that's too many. If it's 400, it's iffy.
So how do we, if we were to go with that consolidated elementary school, where do we get the rest of our money to fix the rest of our problems?
And
Because you
maybe-
gotta spend 5 million at least at the high school just to fix health, life, safety stuff that's gonna be
Yeah.
coming up. in
And
the
Now,
next
if we
year.
get Tab to raise a bunch of money where we don't have to.
Well, nobody's
put
gonna
anything
put
into it.
money into
Here's
it
the
if it's
problem.
just
Every time I
gonna.
try to raise money, they go, oh, you're gonna put money in Joy. Well, then go away.
No,
Yeah,
once
that's
we
what
get
they say.
once we get the new building enjoyed, then it'll be obvious that we don't need any money.
So-
we'll be able to.
And maybe that's.
No, for
where we
sure,
start.
that's going in the-
obviously, money is very important, but
We need 40 million
the thing
after we
is,
fix Joy.
the thing is we've already voted on this to move down this, and I understand you're bringing it up because financially, it makes sense. But you can't do without raising taxes or figuring out how you can pay that health, life, safety. But
Well,
the
how do
other
you do
thing
this
is,
other without doing
but-
that? You're getting so close. Well, what makes a difference?
well, because here's the deal, it still comes down to the kids. So my question is, and I don't know if we can answer that tonight, but my main purpose, I had a couple of purposes. My main purpose for voting to keep Apollo New Boston were to keep the littlest kids in the areas where most little kids are. My question is,
Okay,
the New Boston kids, if you had that in New Boston versus having that grade school in Joy, I don't know where all the kids come from. Is it closer? What's the time differences in the closeness of the students?
I think a lot of our students come from Keysburg. We don't have a lot from actually like the city of New Boston or in surrounding, and we have maybe a handful at best that get dropped off or picked up every day. Majority of our kids are bus riders, whether that's Liza kind of area up north where Marston, Marshall.
Yeah, the Bay Area.
And then there's Keysburg has quite a few as well, and they're kind of sporadic at best.
And
there.
Keysburg can't get to New Boston straight, right? They have to.
Correct. They go to the.
So it doesn't make a difference if the Keysburg kids go to Joy, it's the same distance as going to.
Well,
is.
that's what I'm saying. I like what
Eliza
he
kids,
said.
Closer, Eliza kids are closer to Joy than
Yeah.
Boston.
So I've made no bones about it that I wanted to get away from the Joy campus, mainly because of the building and and to reduce the building. However, the struggle I've had is we have a decent gym, we have a good sized gym down there. If what everybody's saying is true, you put that grade school in Joy, you can keep the cafeteria, you can keep the gymnasium, you can keep that stuff. And it probably going to be for about the same price or maybe even less than what it'll be less than what the
12 million.
Well, it's
Well-
probably gonna be more in your 7 million range.
Right.
If it's a 2-section elementary.
I mean, you're not combining your grade schools, but at least your busing issues may get better as well, is what I'm hearing.
Well, first off,
I
at
would
least the
think
amount of
so.
kids are enjoying. I think it's New Boston, Keysburg, and then you can add the rest of them all up. but-
We have that map. Scott's working on.
Yeah, and that could be, all I'm saying is the kids that are moving have to move about the same distances they're moving now, because and when you're in Eliza, if you go to Joy, it's probably a little bit closer to New Boston. And if you're in Keysburg, it makes no difference. It's about exactly the same. And if you start heading towards Seton, it's gonna be closer.
So disposition of a school property, you can close it. And then, look to sell the building. We know what happens with school buildings that sit closed for, periods of time. If you wanted to raise the building, it's probably going to be in the $400,000 to $500,000 range to get rid of that building. And then you would look at probably selling or gifting that property to the city. So you would either sell it to somebody, return it to the tax roll for development, or gift it to the city for $1 kind of thing, or
I just think that at some point we had to face the fact that we're gonna need less buildings. We have to, eventually, we can't just continue to maintain Apollo and New Boston and forever and have declining enrollment. And then just keep them open just because they're handy for
And
what?
Scott, we thought that a single building reduction is about a $500,000 savings annually.
Yeah.
Approximately. So it's not quite the same as going from 2 elementaries to 1, but there is a savings that the district
that we
realizes.
better not count on, but I mean, it's,
Yeah, right.
maybe there's something there, but
And remember, the survey said that and if you voted and said, we're not going to raise taxes, period, that's fine. But you have to remember that survey said that a majority of the people would support a certain amount
That
of
was
tax
before
increase.
our EAV went through the roof and everybody got
They
their
did,
taxes.
but they
up.
did say that too, but then they turned around and voted to only give us 13 million when they just said, we want that $17 million elementary school. So
Gotcha.
well, that's how you calculate that, because that's kind of, you guys are the ones that calculated that a certain amount by how people voted as what they would support for referendum. The
Right.
people, some of them said 20 million,
Right.
that they'd support
But
20
and
million.
the
Some
way
people said-
the question is laid out, they have that.
Yeah.
You're assuming that if they say, I'm going to support 17, they'd also support 5. So,
right.
In your 3 centers, I mean, K-5 right now, you got 34 K-5 kids in New Boston. You got 30 in Keysburg and you got 23 in Joy. In the Now,
the north.
kids that are not considered in New Boston, but are right out there on the highway around the curve, there's almost another 30 kids right there.
Right.
Elementary age
Yeah.
kids, is that?
Yeah.
It's like 38 kids, right?
Yeah.
But those
Right,
are
right off
really-
85th,
Yeah.
between 85th and 80th.
Okay.
Then what about up in the northwest corner?
Quite a few scattered all over in that northwest corner.
Not the Bay Area that we're.
And to them, is it Joy
No,
and New Boston gonna be equal
Equal.
distance?
Depends on how far from Blacktop you are. A
Um,
little closer to
12
Buffalo,
miles to Joy from my house.
right, closer to Buffalo
And it's
Berry, you
20
get the
miles
less
to
New
New
Boston
Boston.
looks good, and closer to the Blacktop, you get the better New Boston.
there's still sharing of resources that happens between the two buildings. It's just a shorter distance for that. So it does move some of that closer, so it cuts some of that travel time for, specials and special services. If you were to say, do a classroom wing, and it's about 7 million, let's say you do the gymnasium addition here as well as some of that maintenance and repair stuff, you'll end up spending about 12 million bucks. That leaves about 7.8 available out of that 20.
That's, say that again. That was-
So that would be a classroom, 2-section classroom addition, a gymnasium and classroom expansion at Apollo, and then also taking care of those outstanding maintenance and repair issues at Apollo. That's just shy of 12.2 million, which leaves 7.8 million.
I'm gonna beat a dead horse again, but I'll just do it again. There's a shortcut we could take if people were interested in it. That would, again, we'd have to ask them. I think it would be less expensive and it would make almost everyone happy. But, I mean, you're gonna get closer to the everyone's happy side than the not happy side. I just, and I know I've talked to Bill about this and I know I've mentioned it before and
And I did forward that. I think
Okay.
that the option that they listed as 3-section at Joy is what was misunderstood, and I forwarded that.
That was 3 sections at Joy. Julie, go ahead and finish your thought.
I just, if you don't want them to travel for the elementary kids, okay, so we keep the 2 elementaries. I think doing improvements to Boston is a great idea if it's cost effective. But you could, to utilize what is in Joy that we have that is in good shape, remove the 3-story part, make it a junior high there. And just keep the junior high there. Use this building as Apollo Elementary. The expansion will accommodate the extra kids that are going pre-K and 5th grade, would help with alleviate some of the crowding problem. And then you have a brand new building in Joy for the junior high to utilize, and then you can do your improvements at New Boston. And honestly, it just, you're reducing buildings, you're keeping your elementaries in the towns. Which if you wanted to go to attendance centers, I personally think attendance centers are a good idea. It's just the busing that no one likes. But I think it's a great, in theory. So, I mean, I think you could shave a lot of costs doing it that way. Again, it's my opinion. I'm gonna beat a dead horse again tonight, but I think we're not looking at that possibility as an option, and I would like to try.
So you're,
Like to try.
just so I'm clear, Julie, because I did not graduate anywhere near the top of my class. Your proposal, your idea is we would shutter New Boston.
No.
Or not New Boston, excuse me,
Oh.
would shutter Apollo.
To that
This
building.
would become
become-
Apollo. We would add what we need as far as gymnasium space, special ed, pre-K, whatever. And the junior high would be the junior high again. We
Basically,
would
keep
use one
what
building
we
in
were gonna
Toledo,
keep.
but not move the
That's
little kids
400 and some kids.
anywhere.
You
Move
got
the little
400
kids anywhere.
kids, right?
I mean, it's an option.
What can you get here? 200?
This,
Right,
this,
after the,
this
after
will
the,
be built with the addition. It will be sized for 300 kids.
Then you got how many right now?
Oh, you're talking about
320 right now.
With the fifth graders, the Apollo enrollment will be about 400.
Okay, so
Pre-K
this
and
would
what,
need to
pre-K
house
too?
400.
Yeah,
And that,
So we
This-
need to add on.
and
This
the
would be-
line that has I said 3-section elementary, the cost is right. It's labeled wrong, but that would cover what you're talking about at 12 million. I can rework those numbers a little bit,
Are
but
the bathrooms-
that's
And
what I
I-
said. I think
we had
it was
estimated it
like
previously.
And
Are
I
the
wouldn't-
restrooms legal here for elementary school kids?
Yeah, so you can have,
Are they short enough? That's what I'm saying.
yeah, you can
To
have
change
that.
the
It's,
fixtures.
you'll have to have,
You'll have to have more
Don't you-
with 400 kids.
yeah,
We did
You have to have more. There's a theoretical discussion about, do we still put the little elementary size toilet fixtures in schools? Because they don't have a little elementary sized toilet fixture at home. So they somehow figure out how to operate that. So I'm not saying that we don't
I'm
do
just
the
saying,
little
what's the
fixtures anymore,
code
but I would say code, it's not a code problem. It's a operations kind of thing and how you want to, what's the philosophy of little kids using
Well,
bathrooms kind of
and,
thing. So,
and the quick answer to that is they got stools, because mine still seem like they have to have it in front of
Right.
them.
and that's,
And-
Typically-
and
That's
that's a
exactly the
danger
answer,
hazard
yeah.
by
Yeah.
doing
the
that.
difference that we would see in a bathroom, turning this into an elementary school, is we probably want to change the urinal heights and make them all
So they won't
shorter.
fall completely into. that.
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Check it out.
That's,
So I wanted to clarify though, because you were saying if we in essence move the new Boston Elementary to the to Joy, and then did the Apollo update, it would be 12 million, but it should be 10.3 based on your numbers, correct? Because,
Which numbers are you at?
so I'm at the third one down, gymnasium and classroom.
Oh, you're
addition
doing the
Apollo.
8, yeah, all right.
That's
Yep.
3.3, so that wouldn't change, that'd be the
Yeah,
same.
nope, you're right. I was using the 7 million.
Right, and then the 7 million though, because the new classroom addition at Joy, you have 3 sections, but we'd only need 2, correct?
If you did it at Joy, it'd be the 7 million.
Right.
So,
So it'd be 10.3 million.
yes.
So in essence, we'd have almost,
9.7.
It just depends on if you invest anything in that item that's the 1.7 million.
so you're
Where-
not
where
thinking
The
you-
of,
extra stuff at Apollo.
The Apollo
The
maintenance
windows
and
and
repair.
interior doors.
Health, life, safety.
that's not included in
Yeah,
that.
no,
Okay.
that's one of those things that's good to do. You're not required to have to do it. So it's just kind of
We'd have to do them at some point. in the
at
next
some
10
point
years.
you should. And those would be things that you could write amendments for.
Which would raise taxes.
Maybe, maybe not.
Depends on where you
Depends,
hit in your threshold of
Oh, sure.
money. So that's a whole different animal that Scott has to figure
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Those things be maybe a required item in the next health and safety.
So Mike, I added that 1.7 in both. And
That's
I
what
was,
you did. You
I was
did
at
12.
13 and 13.9 and
and so
12.
that's not doing anything in New Boston other than required work.
So you did say the 12.8 for the new 3-section elementary edition.
That actually, you could write that as new middle school edition. It actually is closer to, I have that on a different sheet in here and it is closer to 12 million. But that would get you that addition so that could serve as your 6-8 middle school. Which would, if you did that and then invested money in, say, New Boston, that kind of wipes out all the funds right there.
Yeah.
Or if you did the basic, you could do that and do the basic maintenance and repair stuff at Apollo and New Boston too. That's an option also. Which puts you in the teens.
If you're looking for direction, I don't know what everybody else wants to do, but I would like nothing to use money with now. I would like some kind of plan of how to build a high school. 5, 10, 15 years, don't care. But
Yeah,
we're not ever gonna do it if we don't start like now. And, don't either.
So my thought
Is that
process,
something that can happen? That's my question.
you're gonna have to have somebody donate. You're gonna have to have several
Yeah,
people
that's, I know.
donate.
yeah,
I
so
I still need one of these things to give me and say, this is what we're doing.
This is what we're trying to get to. in 10
Right,
years.
I mean, we've been on this for 8, 9 years.
So we know what the cost and the size is. The two questions would be, where's it gonna go?
We got 2 spots for it.
Yeah, one is it could go on the same high school campus. Possible that it could go here.
I don't know that it would fit on the existing high school
Okay,
campus.
so we've already been doing the math here. So you look at the gymnasium, the football field, you just start at tennis courts and you build it right down there, right through there, and then knock everything down and do whatever you gotta do.
Are we gonna potentially end up with the swimming pool too? That's moving, right? That's all.
Well, if you get the swimming pool, the parkland, it would probably work. I'm not sure.
Because
it would work
that's
with that.
gonna
Because that
happen.
road is not even a road. That is
Public.
Fenton Park, they put a road on. Found that out when I worked for the city, because they just closed it down. I'm like, can't close the city street down, they're like, it's not a city street. It's Fenton.
What's not a sitting,
The street.
it goes around behind
Yeah,
the,
it's not a city street.
Benton Drive, no
Yeah.
part of Benton Drive's a city street.
No, it just goes right to the end of it and stops.
Can you
It
tell
picks
by
up on the other
maintenance?
end.
I tell about the maintenance, but I just,
Well, because we were gonna build a splash pad, here on the road, and then have a road go around to the inside where we took out the pool. It was 2008, and Country Bank was making their way out of town with all the money, so.
Tap, the pool will close. That pool will close
When,
in the
you
next
know,
3 to 5 years. Or sooner.
And so,
still
if-
kind of a hill to build up.
I was gonna
I'm
say,
just
if that's the
telling you,
case,
that's
from an
already
architectural
decided,
standpoint,
regardless
would
of
you
that.
put the
It's
new high
It's
school up there on top? And then where would
sad, but
I don't, I mean, the problem, there's so much grade
Yes,
change
there
at
will
the
be.
high school.
Right.
Yeah, the,
That it would be a challenge.
Should we blow it up with dynamite?
the practice
it
field
flat?
is really the
not with
only,
students in there.
only best usable area, but those are potentially, those spaces up there would be parking if you were,
Right, I think that's what.
The
you'd have to
smart
look at.
answer would be to figure out some temporary solution. Tear down one portion of the building, build instructional space. And then tear down the other half, add the things you need, and then move in. And you could use the instructional portion while you're building the new, and there's a way to keep it functional. It's
You just
just,
saying
your-
tear down the 2-story part and like.
I think you're gonna, yeah, so that there's a few different considerations that would have to be made on that. And then logistically, can you do it on the same property at the same time you're using it as another?
It would be a challenge.
You could do it, it just, we'd have to look at that a little bit. And then for the magnitude of cost, I guess the question would be, how do you want to think about skinning that? Is that a, is that a try to go for a referendum and ask for support for a new high school?
No, I'm going to the country club and I'm just like saying, hey.
So you just want a piece of paper that says for this many square foot of high school,
Yeah.
new, it's gonna
And a
take
nice
this much money.
picture.
A nice little picture.
Yeah, we have the number, Don, we just don't have the
Start
picture.
counting doing theirs.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's what you're asking for, because it's at this year, in 10 years, I mean, that number's gonna change, or you could
well,
put a calculation on
I
there.
want
that's
some of
roughly
this to go to
X amount.
students with money and say,
so
I'm just trying
my,
to make tab happen.
it's getting.
Yeah.
Now let's get back to this.
well, I don't disagree with him, it's just getting there.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to start, because I mean,
So-
we've been, I mean,
You need to start with that guy right next to you that ain't there
like
right
8,
now.
9 years ago, we were talking about putting the high
He
school in
wants-
Joy, which was a great idea, and then build new high school here, which is a terrible idea. But, you know, this has been going on forever. And it would be nice to find a way to make this.
But Mark is, you and Mark need to talk a little more, because he's wanting the same thing you want. He would like to have that to be new high school.
Yeah, well, I don't talk to Mark that much, but
You need to start talking because you got the same ideas.
All right, Mike,
So through talking with everybody, all these meetings over the last couple of years, looking at numbers, you know, here has been my plan kind of, but it's kind of come together. Now, tonight, there's another wrinkle in it, but,
which further keeps us
Ultimately-
from ever moving forward.
right, but we got to keep moving forward some way, shape or form. And so,
I wanna move-
my thought process was to put what I thought would be around $5 million. Now you're saying it's 8.8 million in New Boston. And then to put 1.5 million to 2 million into Apollo, that'd be 5 million. And you're saying it's 3.3 plus the 1 is 4. You're saying that's $5 million. And so we jumped about, we've jumped $7 million in the year that we've been talking on this building.
and prices have gone up.
So
A
you're,
lot.
so we went from 8 million to basically, or no. What would it, that'd be 8, 4 point, so that's 5 million, 8 point, so. Yeah, 12 million dollars to do
Well,
both of those,
Exactly.
which before I was thinking was gonna be 7. So we've almost doubled that in a year, is what you're telling me.
There's something off with our calculation.
I don't know how you got, so I don't know that we could ever do what you're asking at New Boston for 5. You're not gonna be able to knock down the classroom wing and build what you need.
Well, and maybe in my mind, what I was thinking of is you need 10 classrooms because of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so you add them up to 300,000.
That makes sense.
That's maybe what I've been thinking the whole time, based on what we've talked about. And not adding in all these other rooms,
Yeah,
because you're adding in 5 or 6 additional rooms on top of
you
that.
have to, yeah. If you knock that down, you have to, yeah.
And I guess I'm a little,
And
I'd
there's
really-
lots of bathrooms too. That's what we talked about. Most of the
Right.
bathrooms are in those 3-story
Right.
rooms. And they're expensive,
so.
more than a
So
classroom.
they don't count towards the classroom prices.
Right, so that's my thought process. And then, you know, we already have in here what we got. Putting on the additions down here.
Yeah.
And then my thought process, that left you about $10 million or more to put into the high school.
Yeah, you're
Now-
more in the 7 to 8.
And the difference is the inflation.
Yeah.
And so,
Inflation
Well, no, and
and
the way you got
space.
well, both.
Yeah.
Is,
Yeah, it's inflation
20
and
to 30% inflation, and then I wasn't counting the extra rooms. in.
Yeah.
So, in saying that, the wrinkle or the new thing that comes up is the potential of moving that grade school from New Boston to Joy. And, you know, my only struggle with, and that part of my whole thing was to get out of the Joy campus.
Mhm.
My only struggle with that has always been the
Gym.
Gym. This wrinkle could potentially take care of that, at least in my thought process, but I don't want to do it unless we have solid numbers on bus times with kids. I mean, I've always been about the kids first.
Well, we kind of have that because, well, didn't she present that last time? I mean, it wouldn't have been perfect, but it wouldn't take much for her to put that together to throw in bus routes to Joy,
And
right?
you've got buses from New Boston that come this
Question.
direction anyway.
Start
The old-
that discussion.
If you chose to do it elementary, the Boston's elementary and Joy, seat students would potentially come to then to Joy Elementary and relieve some of the students in Apollo. Because right now we're relatively uneven. We have that 17, 18 days, 22, 23, 24. Could some of the Seton kids or the town of Seton then come to the elementary and
Would that save classrooms
So you're
at?
talking about a population balance
Yeah.
between,
Balance it.
between,
Because once you go to Joy, then that makes them seating kids
A
closer.
lot closer, yeah.
Than going clear to Boston, or seating area or whatever, however you want to say it.
Would that reduce the classes needed at Apollo?
Well, you would
He's talking
need
about
to,
just balancing sections better.
but if you balance the sections, you could possibly free up classroom space at Apollo for pre-K. couldn't you?
Well, my classes, I mean, I'm not anywhere near two sections in any grade level. And, we got 22 in each kindergarten class. We already got like 45 or 50 people showing up to kindergarten roundup. So that's gonna be good sized classes again too.
So you got three sections of 22 kids.
In kindergarten.
What about your other?
The smallest is probably 17, 18. Most of them are around 20.
But they're all
Where's
three
yours running?
they're all three
The
sections.
lowest is 15 on average, but we typically look around 18 is where we're at.
but the, guess the,
When you do that based on grade level, though, it's hitting the moving target.
Right.
Because it just depends on each grade level is different.
It's a different balance every grade level.
So you may have
That's
to,
why operations. I don't think it saves by having Seton switch to the new Boston campus. Would save us actual classrooms, but it would.
It just
Even
balances
some
out.
balance.
Instead of him having 22, you have 16 and it might
the
make it a little
problem
closer.
is, you're talking about numbers. You'd have to, if you were gonna try to balance it, you'd have to try to figure out how to balance it back to like 2 and 2 sections. So your classroom population count's gonna go up. If you were gonna try to kind of create more uniformity between the two buildings. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I just thought of.
I was trying,
And that
I
would
was trying to do
change, the
some
problem
quick
with that, it
math,
would
so.
change. I mean, if you do a new boundary line and said, okay, everybody from this line right here is gonna go to Joy instead of Apollo now. And then all of a sudden next year, it lays out
Yeah.
different.
You'd end up with 25 kids in a class for each building.
No, he wasn't talking about that. He was talking about changing where you draw the line so that you could take some of Apollo kids that were possibly 22 in a class and throwing in some of his
Oh,
classes
just
that
to
were more
get 'em
like
back to-
16 or 17.
That
To balance
makes
it
sense.
out.
Okay. I thought you
But
were,
you'd have to change the line and then that might not work next year.
yeah,
You'd have to change. the
that's
line
never
every
gonna
year.
work ever.
Yeah, you'd have to sort that out.
No, I thought you were gonna take like 100 kids at that grade level and just divide them.
Divide them
equally.
now.
Yeah,
And he was talking
that'd be
about,
hard. Okay.
I think, taking some of those kids that are right in the middle then and pulling some of them to Joy meant it was easier.
That would
Hurt their
make sense.
Ride distance or anything with them.
Yeah,
But then that would be a moving target every single year.
it's gonna be,
The line would
no
be
matter
just moving
what,
around.
just like bubble populations, you're never gonna solve for that. In most areas, the enrollment projections are that those bubbles are gonna kind of disappear. There was a population, little bit of a rise that caused that, where you see that one year that kind of gets a little big. The predictions are that those are gonna kind of ease up. It doesn't mean
Unless
that
they
they won't.
don't, yeah.
Unless they do.
Unless you have another like COVID where kids are, or where people are home.
What you're talking about, but what he was trying to say, then that's where your combined elementary solves a lot of that because they don't have the 22 and the 17. You got whatever you need, you just
When you
balance
have,
it out.
when you
whereas
have
on the same-
5
on the
sections,
same
it's
location.
easier to balance, correct?
No, it's not what they're supposed to be.
What's that?
10 centers would do that too, right?
And, yeah, it would, because now you're, again, 5 grade level or 5 sections per grade level at 2 different buildings, so you can spread that more evenly.
And then nobody liked the ideas of attendance centers. Is that anybody ever that never really came to?
But if you,
Voucher looked at it.
A long time ago.
if
yeah.
you go with what Mike's talking about, that says New Boston and Apollo, or, I mean, in theory, anytime you end up with a 4-building district, it doesn't preclude you from making that shift. It's it's not
So you could
gonna
make-
work
you
out
could Make that
perfect.
shift and call it attendance centers.
You could.
and The Joy could be one attendance center.
Might
If you
take
have
a
even
class.
Classrooms.
Yeah,
or
you'd
even-
have to make sure you got the right classroom set up. And so the question is, would you be a little light at the one that's not Apollo? Not sure.
And by doing that, are we busing more or it'd be a, you'd have to,
Not,
you'd be busing more, wouldn't you?
yeah, I was gonna say not necessarily.
And when you're saying attendance center, you're saying,
So you'd have a transition. So kids are going, typically it's gonna be something like a K3, 4, or K2, 3, 5. Then they go to the middle at 6, 8, and then high school.
So all kids, no matter where they're from, every kid in the district in
4
Uh,
buildings.
kindergarten through whatever would go to that building. And the rest of them from there on up would go to the other building. And then as soon as they moved out of that one, and that would switch. So you would go to Joy for 4 years and Alito for 4 years, no matter where you lived in the district.
Exactly. Which is,
which I'm not opposed to looking at that once we figure out what buildings we have.
And that's what makes that balance thing happen too. The classes balance out like that, just like they were all in the same building by
Right.
doing that. That's what you gain. You getting that balance without having them all go to the same building because they technically
you know,
are.
a project at Joy, just throwing this out there, doesn't preclude you from consolidating an elementary there in total down the road too. If a future board says, you know,
Are we just gonna
let's
talk about
add,
joy
let's
or
add.
nonstop? Joy.
Well, what they proposed,
I
what
get
they
it.
said, it makes. could
Trying to
make
figure out how
sense.
to reduce the buildings and keep the busing down is what we're trying to figure out.
I understand.
So because it's already 8 o'clock and we
What-
haven't talked about the most initial,
You get pissed, get pissed.
I'm just saying,
Thing
we're
is-
trying to solve a problem and us 6 people don't have a problem with talking about it and you're the only one that does.
Yeah.
So I don't
No
know,
matter what we do.
maybe
we
you're
don't
the
have
odd
to
man
care.
out.
No matter- I'm the odd man out, but every time we start.
It seems like we're having a conversation.
We wind up
Well,
in joy.
I
So-
will say at the last board meeting, we took a vote and there were 4 board members that voted to not consolidate the elementary school at Joy. And we are still talking about it. I remember when
Well, we got.
Julie
this
came
is
on the
not-
board
this
and
is not the
Tab
same
came on the
idea.
board,
This is
but
a
here-
different
but-
idea that we're
but
talking
we're
about.
still talking about consolidating in Joy. He even brought it up. I mean, that's kind of that's the whole, I don't know. I
I
kind of
think I
agree with
brought it up.
Tab that we keep beating a dead horse.
and
I think I'm the one that
Donnie,
brought it up.
Donnie brought it up and we talked about it a little bit, but I think we've already moved past that now.
Now Julie came up with another idea where we're talking about
Right.
that.
So, but let's
And
take
we're
care
talking
of the
about
other.
attendance centers also. That was
Right.
another, that was 2 ideas.
So far, I've built 3 options here. One is a project at New Boston, adding gym at Apollo, doing some maintenance and repair at Apollo. The second is moving New Boston to Joy, doing the gym and repairs at Apollo. And then the third option is creating a junior high or middle school at Joy. And then your Apollo goes away, those kids go here, and New Boston is gonna need something. We would need to figure out what that is.
Well, and the piece that is probably most pressing, we haven't even talked about yet because we're looking at voting on it tomorrow, is the unit office. So there's basically 2 options. I don't know if there's any other options out there right now, but
And I was contacted by another possible option today. But I want to reiterate my position that I put in the board packet to the board and to the principals. I'm not in favor of that. I wasn't in favor of it from the start. My recommendation last fall was to move the district office to Joy, to the vocational building, and that's still my belief. There's no reason to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in a new property unless we can get rid of an existing property. Now, don't get me wrong, that's a beautiful building. I asked John to take a look at it. It probably cost twice that much to build that. But we don't need that right now. we need to be investing in educational facilities, not administrative facilities. We don't need to take on all new utilities at that site. We're gonna still continue to pay those utilities at the existing site because we can't walk away from joy. We've got a bus garage there, we got our maintenance garage there. Those classrooms are still available and they're not subject to health, life, safety when it's just adults in that building. And so in my mind, it continues to make sense to do that, at least in the short term, until we get our educational facilities where the kids are in order. You know, $300,000 or $400,000 or whatever we talk. I made the comment to Mark and John earlier, I'll put new windows in the building of your choice. We can have all new windows. Which one do you want to do? Or do I want a really nice move-in ready administrative office?
So ultimately, it'd be nice to put that money in. My question, I guess my first question is, and I appreciate and understand what you're saying. The problem is we're looking at, I want to verify, because your guys' numbers from last year were $100,000 to move the unit office into the ag building.
I'd have to go back. I'm not sure where.
And I did
what
ask
was
John
all in
about that. I gave him a
It's
copy of that.
project number, or it's April 12th, 2021. You guys did that.
I'll have to dig that out because I'm not sure what was constituted as a number.
Is that updating that for the pre-K?
No, that was 180,000 update for the pre-K. On here, it's unit office move to ag building. And so my thought on that, I went and looked at the building. Well, there's, I guess, there's two buildings I know of, and you said there's a third one. And at least, forgetting about Joy for a minute, I think if you were going to another building, the Bredberg building is the best choice. Because of the cost, because of the quality, because of multiple things. But if you have to, the Joy is most likely we've continued. I've never heard anything different, but that would be a temporary move. So
We've talked about a lot of options tonight that would make Joy not temporary.
right, but the thing is would you want to be in that district office away? If that was a district office and keep it that way, you'd have to update it at some point. Right?
I will spend the rest of my career in that district.
Well, you
office.
will, because you told me in 2 days or something you're up, or 27 days you're up, so. Or so the problem is timing in my mind, because you have this opportunity. That place has been for sale for a while, but now they have an offer. The owner has agreed to, he'd rather sell it to the district, but he's not gonna give us a bunch of time to make that decision either. So, and the offer that's out there is not quite fully priced. So if someone comes and offers him full price, then it's gone. So then you lose that option. But if you pull the trigger and you do that, you have, you can move IT in there. You can move the administrative offices. So you open up, I don't know how big of the IT room over there, if that saves us building a classroom, if we had the IT room empty.
The IT, they're in their windowless room right now. We'd rather not make a classroom.
Has no windows on it.
No windows.
Why would they build a window? Before our time.
Is there some other room that could be moved into there to free up a classroom to be usable classroom? If you moved IT?
We need office space, you know that.
Like that $100,000 was an estimate that we tabulated. That was on somebody else's estimate to the district. We didn't construct that. We just tabulated that. That was something somebody else gave the district.
Is there any other rooms you got available that have windows that you could move into the room that don't have windows, so you had a classroom that had windows.
Pre-K is gonna get activity room. I was gonna move music there, but Mrs. Rake asked to use the stage. So the pre-K room will be the after-school program room and indoor recess.
So it doesn't help you to move the IT out of there, is that? Gives you a room that's not huge with windows.
You can't, could you, well, no, I was gonna say,
It's actually a pretty good size room. It's just, I don't know. I've been in it.
I don't even.
Does
which
it have
room is it?
exterior walls? Is it, I mean, is it in the center of the
No,
building?
there are no exterior walls. It was like the end of the building and they built on an addition and those were the windows were now a wall to the next classroom.
Yes, makes sense. Why would you build an old, say, okay. Maybe they knew there would be no kids on there, so that's what they were.
What's the other two options? What'd you say? You said you got approached by somebody else today.
The other one wishes to read, the third one wishes to remain anonymous. The second one was in your board packet.
Okay.
It was, yeah, I think it used to be the old,
Probably build it for like the health department or something.
it was the health department or it was the,
Bought it and rented it to them.
Unemployment office, maybe?
maybe it's across from the grain elevator out there. That's, I rented that building, well, the owners, I rented it from them when it was in there. And it's a nice, it's the same size as the Red Room building, but not near as nice. Yeah, Forest Brown is in there. And so there's a lease through next year for half of it. So, and that's in your board pack, that stuff's in your board packet. But you said there's a third option, but they want to rename it anonymous, I guess.
Yep.
Is there a cost or?
There, yes, there was. But that would be a discussion
It's like closed
that
session.
we'd have in closed session about the sale or purchase of real property that we can have.
Right.
But because you wanted to act on this
Right.
one property, that's why it's listed specifically on the agenda.
Does it happen to be like the exact same price as the other ones?
No,
Oh, it's like, hey, you're gonna spend that much. That's this beautiful bridge, man. Like, so you're at that. Weren't we looking at a couple buildings uptown, but it was too expensive for the IT and for you guys to get hooked up with internet or whatever?
well, that's, I mean, that's just one of the utility, when we get off a school campus, we're gonna have to buy an internet connection.
Right, so either way, that's part of the, no matter where you go.
We have access to the school connection in the mobile building in Joy, so it's not an additional cost.
I just didn't know if it was more expensive because it was a bold brick building or something. No idea.
Well, at least for my thoughts, I would like to see what that final New Boston, that 8.8 million with the gym. What can we get it down to where we're not squeezing ourselves to where we can't function? But what can we get that down? That's the number you came out with. That's should be, in my opinion, the highest number we're gonna see. What?
We can look at it. It's gonna be a question of. We can look at what the program is. What you gotta be careful of is you can't just say, I'm gonna lop off a room to save money, or he'll
I
not
realize
have
that.
enough space.
I realize that, but if you can,
Yeah, so we can look at that. And then, as Don was noting, is prices are still escalating, and so we want to just be cautious to not get too aggressive with the numbers, or we'll shoot ourselves in the foot when you get the bill for construction costs. So I would rather be a little conservative with the numbers just to be cautious too.
And then, so that, and then if we can see what it would be is if we added that to the Joy Gym, I don't want to call it the good part, but the non-3-story part, which
The modern section.
the modern section, what that is. And then also if we could have the student numbers, meaning the bus routes, I don't know if they can run on that, they should be able to run on that program. How many kids are going to bus for how long? If they went to New Boston versus Joy. Does that make?
Not possible.
Are you able to do that?
I mean, going into Boston is not gonna be much different than you got now. Unless we're able to add bus routes, but that's gonna change.
Okay, so
And
New
then going to
Boston,
Joy,
we
too.
know we have from New Boston, but if, I'm just trying to, because I don't want to have to take the littlest kids, take them any farther than we're already taking them. If we can do everything we can to slow that down, but if we can move them to Joy, it sounds like it answers some other questions that we're hung up on. And it actually might be a better move than doing New Boston now. That's my opinion. I don't know how the community down on the west end, I mean, I don't know what they would think of that. I don't know. Julie, do you have, where does that fall into?
No matter what we do, they're
No.
gonna make 30% of the people mad. So
I
I'd say more
realize,
than that, actually.
I realize
I'd say
that,
more
but-
than that.
Yeah.
but
No
I
matter
mean,
what. Because nobody, the honest truth is, nobody wants to lose any of the conveniences they have now. Nobody wants to lose a building in their community. Nobody wants it. Nobody does. But the problem is that at some point, it's gonna have to happen.
Because what was it, 12 years ago?
I just don't know when that point is.
12 years ago, we consolidated, but we didn't consolidate a single building.
and it was
Right.
recommended at that time.
We didn't even consolidate what we owed on buildings.
Right.
We kept paying.
So
on those buildings.
That's
this is
what's funny is I know Jim brought it up and I only hear the split from one direction. I'm gonna just say it. The West End hates us. Nobody here in Aledo is making any decisions to try to hurt anybody on the West End.
And I think
But
if you
that's
talk to
all
somebody down there, they
they-
would say exactly that.
No, they are so dead set that we're doing something. No, I know, but they're trying to tell us that we're doing stuff just to hurt them, just to take stuff away from them. And that's not the case. Aledo is the biggest population center in the district. And you're asking us to move everything to the West End that has the least amount of population. That just doesn't make any sense to me. New Boston is a small town. Joy's dying. Joy was dying before we consolidated as a school district. It used to have 500 people in it. Now it's got what, 300? There's 12 kids, right? That live in Joy. 12 kids that go to our
K-5, no, there were
21.
23,
Okay, 23. So
That's
there's
when the
23.
backlash comes, when you try to close Apollo and New Boston to go to Joy, that's where everybody's mad, because.
Now you're taking all the Aledo kids and you're moving
And
down
see,
there.
and I don't have
All the
any,
New Boston kids.
I think my particular case is I don't really care the exact, whatever you call the town. I care about the entities that are already there that make it cheaper for us to make something happen. That's my thought. I don't, it's a thing that, like I said, no matter what you do, if you move and make New Boston School close, they're gonna be mad at you. If you make Joy School close, they're gonna be mad at you. If you make a building close here in this town, they're gonna be mad at you. But we can't, as a board, I don't know that we can worry about that as much as if it makes financial sense. We're put on this board, we're elected to it to take care of the finances
Right.
of the district and to educate kids. We're not here to make all communities, everybody happy and
Right.
smiling and everything perfect, because we can't do that. We already know we can't do that.
Right.
It's impossible.
Well,
It doesn't make any, no matter what decision that we make.
Yeah, we're not trying to, we're pissed off.
Well,
Joy.
right,
that's
And
the
then we
thing.
went and tried to piss off
The
New
one thing
Boston.
I've learned
That's
tonight
what
is there is no option that we can do that we have enough money to do.
That kind of dulls everything.
And
No,
to
absolutely.
me, my personal opinion is that we should put as much money into the high school as we can. Because not necessarily the existing high school, but rebuild a high school. I'm
Who's
not as
ready?
bad as Tab. I'm fine with complete overhaul, remodel of the high school. Because every kid in the district is gonna go through that school. That is the flagship of the district. everybody goes to the high school. They go there for sporting events, they go there for plays, concerts, everything. And that's where I think we should spend the most of our money. That's just my opinion. And when we look at all these other options, like every time we get through any of the options, combine them all, we end up with like 7 million for the high school. That's it. And that's my whole time, this whole time, I thought the high school should be our priority. And I don't know, I'm to the point where it's like, we're not moving anywhere. We're not gonna get anywhere.
And as a board, we tried to solve this by putting out these surveys and stuff, ask the people what they want. We all said that, well, let's ask people what
Right.
they want.
And we
And then the
gave
way
them,
the survey was written, and it was cited to make you wanna choose the
Consolidate.
option that we said we wanted. And so then we didn't follow that because there was four members that said, no, we're not gonna do
well,
that.
but on the survey, the high school was piecemeal. And
Yeah,
it said
yeah,
redo the offices.
I
And the nurses
get
say,
it,
"Who
I
wants
get
to
it, but
spend
what
$2
we did that,
million?"
we
I know.
did that.
And I was wrong. I've said it a
Okay,
million
I'm
times.
just- and
I was
that's what I'm
wrong
saying.
for voting to
We
approve
did that, and we presented that. That was on us, whether, no matter if it was me or you or these guys, that's what we asked
And the
these guys to do
results,
for us.
the results really weren't that. It was
Okay.
43 to 36, 43% to 36%. If you looked at the non-people with the architects and
The
the
ones that
guy.
these guys say
Yeah,
would
And
come
so
go.
I don't know what the margin of error is on that survey, but it's probably 3 or 4 points. So you're really neck and neck. Plus then you come out and say, well, this is what we want, but we're not gonna give you enough money for it.
So, right, wrong, or indifferent, we've already set that course to keep the 2 grade schools. So
Here,
we need to
I have
move,
to say
keep moving.
something. If you're truly concerned about the education of the kids, if you truly don't care about who you tick off, and if you truly care about the best busing situation for, it wouldn't be everyone. If all those things are equally true, the Consolidated Elementary would have been your first choice. If you didn't care about who you ticked off, because last month, if you didn't care about who you ticked off, you would have voted the other way.
That's 17 million, and then that's gone, and you're gonna have to raise taxes to get to the health life.
And if you want to do what was best for the education of the kids, ask the teachers. I know there's a few that don't agree, but I got teachers contacting me after the vote, said, thank you for trying to stand up to do what's right for the kids. It's not a matter of, the whole vote last time was about logistics and how to make the parents happy and to keep things convenient. That's what the vote was about. It wasn't about the best education of the kids. Can we do fine when we're separate? Yeah, we can. But we're still having divisions because the kids are separated from the time they get into pre-K or kindergarten and until they come together in 5th grade. When they get to 5th grade, you'd hear the kids talk about, well, these kids didn't know this was like this in New Boston, and these kids didn't know like this, it was like this in Apollo. And
So
they don't know each other, they don't work together, they don't have teams together with their teachers at the same grade level working together. I told you guys this, I answered my survey. I like both. I can understand why you want to keep your school in your town and why it's easiest for families in those towns. I can also see why it would be awesome for the kids to be together from the time they're in pre-K. Both are good, but if it's really about, you don't care about ticking people off, the vote last month would have been different. That's my only point.
well, my vote wouldn't have been different because, and you know, we've already been through all that. I'm not gonna go back down that road.
All right, that's where we at.
And if we're, so I guess what I'm wanting to know is if we're never gonna be, well, I shouldn't say never, because if when this board changes in 2 years, then maybe that group is willing to do that. But if just say, for instance, if there was always the same stance amongst an average group that you would never want to take care of or get rid of and consolidate grade schools, we have no other way to get less buildings, because the high school's got to be a high school. Everybody that attends, the junior high's got to be a junior high, everybody attends that building from the district. So the only building you have left to consolidate would be the grade schools. And if you did it in Aledo, you would complain about busing all these kids from all this other place. If you did it down in New Boston, let's just say we consolidated the elementary and said New Boston, would that sound better? But it doesn't make sense to do it to Boston because there's not other facilities there that we can hook onto. So that throws that out. Plus it pulls everybody a lot further. That doesn't make any sense. That's why that wasn't an option. there's all these reasons why why it boiled down to where we thought we wanted the survey to be written, because we thought overall that was going to be the best for the education, the best financially, the easiest to sell to both sides, because the West Enders weren't losing everything, and Alito still had school buildings. They weren't like just abandoned, no buildings, no school buildings in Alito. I think that's why we thought that would sell, and that we would be able to get votes to pay for that if we chose the Joy location to do that. It made the most sense overall. And then Bill asked for a vote, and you got 4 guys together and they said no. So that eliminated that possibility at this moment. But that's not what our survey was written to do. And it's not that's what I'm saying. It seems like now any other option we got is going to be controversial, even more controversial than that, because 4 board members decided that they didn't want it when the community said that they did want it.
Well, the community called us, emailed us, and you two, and told us, if we're gonna talk about the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, but you're saying, so we had 800 people answer the survey, and then we had
Yeah,
600.
whatever.
Then we had
talked about
600
that 6 months
Right. Then we
Here's
had
the deal.
600 people answer this.
75% of the kids live within 2 miles of right here. They complain.
Okay.
Those 4 board members did that. All right, now the 5 of us or 6 that are in here are gonna talk about the same stuff we talked about 5 months ago.
But we just don't have another, what's the other option?
I don't know. I just want the clock to ring so we can end this because we've absolutely got nothing.
Well, we got 3 options that they're gonna bring back to us.
Just give me something to vote on.
And this isn't easy stuff that we're trying to deal with. So
No,
it's
it's
taken a
not.
long time. And, you know, you and I had a conversation about, you know, wasting time on stuff. And there's absolutely wasted time every meeting we have, because that's how it is. But we have to do this to continue to get information, to get ideas, to hear from
Right,
the
and
community.
it's just
and
like
move
anything
forward.
that you negotiate, it has to have something for you. It has to have, if we're making a deal, that deal has to have something for you. It's got to have something for everybody involved.
Right.
It can't just have everything for one side, or else both people have to walk away saying, well, I kind of lost a little bit, but I still feel like I did good.
Right.
That's the way a negotiation ends up.
I would
Not
say-
that everybody,
The building on the new Boston doesn't do that.
I would say that your
I agree.
discussion is not without fruitfulness, because I've been kind of taking notes and tabulating, and I think you got more like 4 or 5 options based on what you've discussed. So we'll kind of work quickly tomorrow morning, see if we can't revisit the numbers and send something back. But, you know, of course, option 5 is new high school. The big hangup is going to be, if you're going to try to create a solution to, you know, just impending costs with elementaries, it is only going to leave a certain amount of money. And so if a new high school is a long-term goal, then the question is going to be, should you start investing at least some monies back into the current just to get you by? And if you do, what's that going to be? Or do you bank that money and start working on a financial strategy for how to move towards a new high school, which is, you know, there'll be a reserve amount in the spreadsheet that basically says how much you could carry forward for something like that. So I think the strategy is, are you going to try to make a solution that addresses everything that's under the high school level to some degree, and then either address current high school needs while you work on a solution, or carry it forward to work towards a high school? I think that's literally the decision that has to get made.
what would you like to see, Tab? Would you like to see, hold off and don't just put the bare minimum in the high school for right now? And then
Yeah, you
save
know
the
me, I
bigger,
don't want to put a dollar in the high school.
and then save the bigger amount for actually building a
Yeah,
real
whatever we
deal.
have to do to keep going, it's fine. I really don't got a problem with building on it. Be Boston, but
But you don't want to spend 7 or 8 million dolling up the high school that we got.
no, God,
Gotcha.
no.
So that's the
Personally, I mean,
question.
that's your stance.
Yeah, because I mean, I just need a starting line so we can somehow make it.
And that's kind of what I've tried to.
What about you, Bill? What about you? What's that?
sorry, we were talking about, I was asking him about carrying the money forward.
He asked me
There
if
was a
I would,
problem.
you say it again, I can't.
What's your, would you rather just put the bare minimum in the high school until we could either drum up a bunch of donations and so many years down the road and actually have a new high school?
Yes,
Would you be up, or would you rather just put 6, 7, 8 million into the current high school?
I'd rather have a
and-
plan that really, I mean, I'm not as opposed to remodeling, but when I say remodel, I mean, it's not gonna look the same at all. It might have some of the same structure.
Soldier
But-
field after.
Yeah, well, more than that even, but yeah, I would rather have spend the money on the high school to expand the VOTEC area, redo the kitchen commons, the whole thing. I mean, I would love to see us do like what Knoxville did and wrap around the back or something and tear down the front.
But you're not really up for doing a $8 million kind of remodel, but
No.
nowhere near a.
No, and I think that's what really turned people off with this little piecemeal thing that we gave them during the survey.
How about you?
What I would like to do is take the money we have, get the grade schools up to par, hopefully have $7 to $8 million and start basically get those taken care of first. And then I do want to spend that money in the high school, updating it. But I'm hoping that we can do it with a plan to where we take sections where we can update it. And while we're doing it, you know, because this isn't going to happen overnight. If we start on the grade schools, it's going to take, we were talking probably 3 years. And so in that time frame, do you land some grants? Maybe, maybe not. Do you start a capital campaign asking for donations? And so you get your grade schools taken care of first. And let's say you got $6 to $8 million. Let's just, you know, because it's kind of wide ranging. You take that money and hopefully you got grants. If you don't, maybe you've raised another 8 or 10 million, I don't know. And if you got that money to go for it, you go for it. If you don't, 10, 12 million dollars, whatever you would come up with would go a long ways to really, basically, like Bill said, updating that completely up to par.
I'm just afraid to put a bunch of money into it. Because you know, and it's just gonna cost more of that building, this condition it's in.
Right, I just, $30 million or whatever it is for,
What about you, Julie?
The numbers are so big, I don't even know where to start on the high school. I don't start, I mean, if you gave me my unlimited cash reserves and said, what do you want to do? I'd put a pre-K through 12 campus out in Millersburg Corner, but you know, that's not happening anytime soon. For the high school, I don't think you should go for all these remodels in the off chance that, you know, if we were able to get something going like that, and you don't want to put 8 million in it now, and then it's like, that's what I worry about with the auditorium remodel that we did and all that work is how can we salvage
You
the
anchor-
millions that
you
we
make
put
an
in
anchor
there?
out of it, and you're like,
And-
we put so much money into it.
Because I know when this first started, I said, well, okay, can we just, if we're gonna move the high school, can we keep it like a athletic and fine arts center right here in this location, and we can save and use those that we put all that money into? I mean, because that's the problem, is that building is the exact same as Joy. If you want to be consistent, you don't put in all the money for all that body work that's required at Joy in here. But can you get enough money to actually do the big ideas? That's, I mean,
there's a lot of money being invested in the communities right now, whether that keeps going, whether they're willing to pay for a high school.
Let's go.
I mean, well, you don't know. That's the thing.
Write a check, classes.
On the committee, we'll help.
What about you, Jason?
I don't want to pour a bunch of money into a building that we're going to end up having to gut later anyway.
Right.
I'm with you. I'm with like, let's keep it workable with the long-term goal of that's the next building we're going to have to give a huge amount of money to.
What about you, Donnie?
Same way. I think that I don't, if we could, if Tab and I know Mark's all revved up about, I mean, I know that he personally would like to see that happen. I don't know how committed he is to seeing that happen, but I know he would like to see that happen.
Correct.
And he's probably got some friends that would like to see that happen too. So I think we've got a lot more likelihood of donations coming to handle that project than we got donations coming to handle our elementary school projects.
Right, and that's why I've continued to say, let's get the elementaries fixed up. And there's other avenues besides what we have control of. State of Illinois, donations, and then we can,
But we got this building really nice. If we had a consolidated elementary, that would be really nice. And then if we got a bunch of donations for the high school, we'd have a pretty nice setup.
or we got this one pretty nice. We get those two elementaries pretty nice. And then we get our high school done, then we're set to.
The exploration for the high school is, how do you do it? And, you know, that'll take a little bit of massaging to figure it out. The most expensive is to just move somewhere else and build all new. The cheapest is to figure out, is there anything that's salvageable and usable of what you got that you can start to build off of? Because then you're constructing pieces that are new, and then eventually the old goes away and you're left with just the new.
Is
But-
there, like, if, Tab probably wouldn't like this idea, but if you were to keep the same location, are they totally getting away from going up instead of out for expansion? I mean, if you were to take everything out at the high school except for maybe the auditorium and could you make it, since the lot is small, can you go up instead? 3 floors instead of 2? I don't know.
But
It's,
is anybody doing that? I mean, is that-
Probably not.
yes, if you have to. People prefer, within reason, to be on one story. High school buildings are a little different because of the size. Sometimes there is some advantage to having, say, a 2-story building because you're not having to walk past 10 classrooms to get down to the end kind of thing.
You also got a lot smaller roofs.
The smaller, but you're spending money on some other things. So the
Elevator.
cost usually ends up being about the same, whether you're doing a multi-story building or a single-story building. There's just some circulation pieces that you've got, you're moving a certain number of people, students and faculty and staff up and down and inside the building every day. And is there some detriment to that? Yes. Is it the kind of thing that if we were to keep the auditorium and the gym and add a new gym and a new education wing and then tear the other parts down, and to make that work, you had to do a 2-story educational wing, would that be acceptable? I would think in most situations, yes. So I don't know that if you said, do you want a multi-story elementary school? Most people try to avoid having multi-story elementary schools. You get into high schools, because they are bigger, they have more activity spaces, more different kinds of spaces. Having that multi-story space is less of a hindrance than say at an elementary school. So.
I think we actually got productive.
Who drove that?
Well,
Who drove that?
The last item that we've got there, I just want to reshare this information with you because it's actually a discussion item for the full board tomorrow. But this is what was discussed back in December related to the recommendations from the administration, athletic directors, and coaches pertaining to the athletics related to this facility move. And this is the same document that we shared with you, I think, December 7th. But those are some of the things I know you've probably been contacted by some folks with some concerns about that. We haven't acted on any of those things yet. But when we did discuss it then, there was some general consensus to accept those recommendations. I think probably a couple of those recommendations may have changed at this time based on some additional feedback we've gotten. But like I said, I think that's a discussion for the full board tomorrow.
Has anything changed on it since then? Has anything on here changed since then?
Well, I think the locations on a couple, I know Mr. Hofer's not here tonight, but I know he's had some additional discussions with high school wrestling, and if they're able to transport mats, that they prefer to have their varsity matches in the high school gym as they were years ago, and that's doable if they can transport the mats. The problem is we have no storage capacity in the high school. On this
Someone
one,
asked me, and I didn't know, but they said the wrestling match used to store under the cafeteria. You open the doors and there's,
It's in the gym
High
behind the
school.
mats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where they used to
I
put it.
thought the mats got too big to fit through the doors.
yeah, the-
I got
the-
those
I don't know, they
the
just asked
modern
me.
mats are a
Piece of
really
mats.
thick
They
foam.
don't roll up like the old ones.
Yeah.
That's when because then they started storing them at the at Breeden's building.
Oh,
And then every meet, they had to move them back and forth. I think they forget to check if Jeremy doesn't want as many home meets because of that. I don't know if it's still the same now. That's a year. I don't know, but that was
And so that's,
12, 15 years.
I mean,
ago.
that's the only issue, that there's no problem having them there, just knowing that they've got to transport.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's,
yeah, and I know the wrestling,
not a good time.
they've told me, I've heard lots and lots that they want to have it at the meet, or they want to have it at the high school and they're willing to transport. And they would buy a little storage locker if they had to, is what I keep hearing.
So that's one of the pieces that I know was changed on there, and Mr. Hofer should be able to talk about that.
And is this, is this the piece that affected related to the fifth grade?
Very first line at the top.
Oh, boy, yes. I've heard a lot about that.
The one that says sixth through eighth grade?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I mean, and that's why I say, I'm not sure,
because we're gonna have, I
that's
think, a large
become
contingency.
an issue now, but this was the same thing that was discussed back in December.
And
And the big reason why that was put that way is kids practicing and kind of being in their home, like they're not having to be moved all over the place. When you talk about moving fifth graders back, you got fifth grade now in Boston, Apollo, to where all fifth grade was right here. Transportation, everything was super easy.
fifth
Or now
and
the
sixth
move, you're
grade.
taking that opportunity where you just put fifth grade 20 miles away. How they get transported.
You give me a sense of what the fifth grade population
Is that
for that are affected by this athletic decision.
when you look at it with cross country, wrestling and track, it's all year. The
Right.
kids would want to be able to do that. stuff.
Right, I know.
The
There was
non-wrestling-
8 fifth grade wrestlers this year.
8 fifth grade wrestlers.
From 8 fifth grade wrestlers district-wide.
Yes,
So how many coming from New Boston?
I don't know that. But
Just,
then we got cross country.
And
You do it
I
for
think
wrestling,
Morgan
track
and Mr.
cross
Hofer are
country
going to
is
be
bigger
able to
numbers.
talk
They'll be
about.
able
some
Yeah, I
of
was
that
gonna say,
tomorrow.
those are the kinds of questions.
Even here,
that I
my
have.
daughter's in there, and I know of at least 6 or 8 or more fifth grade track kids just coming out of this book. So. What, and so like I said, I'm sure everybody's been hit on this. I've been hit on this a lot. I know we got a big contingency coming. What are your guys' thoughts on allowing fifth grade, but we just say we're not gonna transport?
Yeah.
I mean, they tend, I think
that's
you.
a real shot at 1.5 of your district.
well,
We're
and
not taking-
it's also a shot to parents that can't afford to get their kid.
I think it takes opportunity away from kids. I mean, making the decision to have it 6 or 8 takes an opportunity away from kids. I don't want to do that. I want all of our kids to have those opportunities.
I've been coaching football up here on that spot for 25 years, and I've had 10 of my 40 kids have been from the West End every time. So there's
Well,
ways to do it. I know it's difficult. I know it's tough. I just think maybe that's a vulnerable group. Maybe we should say this for tomorrow, but it's a pretty vulnerable group to just tell,
Well, but you're only talking about one grade level. You're not
Yeah.
talking about, and you're not telling them that, hey, you
you're
can't
telling
ever
those kids that they're right
participate.
there to walk over that they can't because those kids are too far away.
But you're also just telling one group that they can't participate 1 year. They'll get to the next year. I mean, we don't let fifth graders and sixth graders play football or
No.
basketball or volleyball.
That's a little different.
How's volleyball and basketball different? Well, I understand, but the track, I mean, they're all different sizes. I mean, they're competing. I
Wrestling,
know.
I mean, for me, wrestling's a big one because you wrestle your own weight.
Right.
And the most kids on the team this year were fifth graders.
Right.
More than any other grade.
This is why you guys stopped your track program at fourth grade.
We only literally did that this year because you guys let fifth and sixth grade, we were unaware this was happening. So I don't, it can go to sixth again, it can go to fifth. We'll do whatever that's not in the school. That's what we try to do. We try to serve the, we used
that's
to do
what-
volleyball.
I think it's
for
important you
4 through
guys have
6.
this discussion
We
tomorrow
stopped
night,
doing that. It actually
not-
ran our
not
program
just
out when you
repeat,
guys started allowing
because
fifth
you're gonna
grade.
have people here.
We
that are
like to
concerned
repeat
about it.
ourselves.
Well,
I know you do.
Well, I didn't know.
I'm assuming the wrestling.
I was- Yeah, I was just trying to get a feel for where people are at.
I don't care. I'm follow whatever their
I just don't have a
recommendation
great
is.
solution of how to make it happen.
Yeah.
I would love to have them do that. That's where the one thing where the, I don't want to bring this back
Some
up, but
sports I
attendance
didn't wanna do
centers, K2
travel.
there and 3-5
But I
there.
would love to
Like
do
all
that.
fifth graders
Right.
right here,
Just-
the whole district's fifth grade.
Yeah.
It makes that 5-8.
And that may
Ability
be
for
possible
athletics.
sometime down the road.
So we can definitely add this back in, is my answer. I mean, I can do that right now.
Because they got that, they got Bear Country wrestling. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of those kids are going to.
The wrestling coaches are very against not having fifth graders. I know that.
They're not alone.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a big part of it.
And I get it. I want them to be able to participate too. Overall operation,
Might have to see what
I
the
struggle
state
with.
is an alternate as a fifth grade. It's not the first one. We've had kids actually make the state as fifth grade. So, yeah.
That's for tomorrow.
It's for tomorrow, but it was related to buildings to somewhat, so.
Well, it's important to know, we're not voting on it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's a discussion item, so there's no vote happening tomorrow. So,
Right, but I just want to make sure, I thought everybody was getting inundated like I am, but I want to make sure everybody knew it's coming tomorrow. I mean, I've been told.
That-
We'll see how many show up.
There's 4, sorry.
But if you compare to other
That's
schools,
important.
like it's all over the place on what schools do.
No matter what
It's based on their district. Some allow fifth, some don't even have a junior high wrestling, like Farmington's all club. So every school kind of does their own thing, but what's best fit for them.
Will the world stop? No matter what decision we make?
You just give me seventh grade football.
I know a few parents that think it's going to.
I know.
Absolutely. Just get rid of all sports. The world's not gonna stop, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Now you're talking Donnie's language. Are we good? I'll take a motion.
clarify that, I want to say with girls sports because it's the most dramatic.
Are we- I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I don't care.
Stop while he's-
Is that a motion to adjourn?
That's a
yet?
motion to adjourn. I'll second. I
Just
think we
lucky that
made-
wasn't live, Don.
What was that?
It's recorded.
It doesn't say, somebody's gonna listen to it, I don't care.
All right, all those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody opposed? All right.
I
Meeting's
so
adjourned.
now, I
Billy,
will
West,
volunteer-
sixth graders.
I will volunteer to drive a white bus from New Boston Elementary. up
We
to
could
your
go